Lights out, and welcome back, everybody, to the Low Downforce podcast, the For Friend Formula One podcast. There are three of us. You've got the proper lads. You've got Matt, you've got Josh, and you've got myself, Ben. We are missing J9 tonight, but she has sent us her predictions because this is the Chinese Grand Preview, our predictions episode for the upcoming Chinese Grand Prix, and it is a sprint race weekend, no less. So even more on the table in terms of predictions, even more excitement on the track in terms of how the weekend unfolds. We have just dropped an F101 episode on sprint races and how sprint weekends look different than normal race weekends. So if you're new to Formula One, if you're not sure how this weekend is going to change and feel a little different, be sure to check out that episode and be sure to check us out on socials, either listening on all of your streaming platforms or watch along on YouTube, as well as join us on socials at Low Downforce Pod. Be sure to check us out and engage with us all season long. But yeah, we just came off of a crazy Australian Grand Prix. What a season opener it was. And we go right into the second half of the doubleheader with the Formula One Heineken Chinese Grand Prix in Shanghai. This is only the second edition we've had since COVID. So we had one last year, but we haven't had any others this decade at least. And it's, like I said, sprint weekend. It is going to be a doozy. So to unpack it first of all, we have to go to Matt's track facts, of course. What do we got this weekend?
Like you mentioned, Ben, we're going to Shanghai, to the Shanghai International Circuit, which is a permanent track. This track's been around since 2004. It was built in 2003 from a marshland in the Jiading district of Shanghai. It's actually meant to look like the Chinese symbol Shang, meaning upwards. I think I also saw it meant like tremendous or incredible or something.
Well, their grass caught on fire
I
last
did not
year.
know that.
So
I do not speak Chinese, so to any of our listeners who may, please feel free to correct me. To me, it looks kind of like a wave, which is still really cool. Lewis has the most wins and poles here with 6 of each. And actually, it was 5 out of his 6 times on pole that he converted it to a win. The other time he had one was when Bottas had pole. So if he does get pole, look for him to win. Unfortunately, we don't have a home race this year in China, as Zhou Guanyu is no longer racing in F1 at the moment. But about the track, there are 16 turns here. It's a clockwise track, and it goes 5.451 kilometers or 3.4 miles per lap. 56 laps totals up to right around 305 kilometers or 191 miles. There's 2 DRS zones, one on the start-finish straight and one on a very long back straight, one of the longest that we'll see in the season.
I think it's only shorter than the Vegas Strip, if I'm not mistaken. It's crazy long. You'd have to fact check me on that, though.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of crazy turns, and one of them is right after turn 1, the start-finish straight. It goes into, there's a right-hand turn, into a right-hand turn, into a left-hand turn, into a left-hand turn. Your wheel does not go straight from basically that start-finish line until after turn 4. It doesn't stay there long because you have some hairpins, a chicane, some turns that are over 90 degrees, sweeping turns in 12 and 13. And another like over 90 degree turn at 14 after that long straight. In terms of the actual track, there's low speed corners, high speed corners, long straights, heavy braking zones. McLaren, I'm looking for you to pull out your skills here. It's going to favor multi-stop strategies since the tarmac has changed. I think it was 2019. Since 2015, there's been a virtual safety car or a safety car in every single race here. Not going to foreshadow anything necessarily, and we just came off of a crazy Australian Grand Prix with plenty of those. So maybe this will be a different year.
But hey, if last year's race was any indication, we'll do a quick little track flashback, if you will. We did get a safety car and an extended one at that because Lance Stroll decided to crash into somebody under the safety car. And take a couple drivers out of the race, both Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo, who was also racing for VCARB last year. So crazy race last year. It was also a sprint race last year. So We know a little bit of what to expect, although hopefully it's not quite as dominant as it was last year. Max Verstappen won both the sprint and the Grand Prix, both by the same margin. So he was pretty dominant in both, winning both by just over 15 seconds, I believe. But one of the standouts was that Lando grabbed the sprint pole in the sprint shootout qualifying, because that was before McLaren had their big upgrade package in Miami that turned them into one of the front running teams. We were still in kind of the Max Verstappen dominant era, coming off of, Red Bull's most dominant ever Formula One season. But as Matt mentioned, one of the highlights last year was Zhou Guan Yu. It was his home race. He was the first ever Chinese driver to have a home race in Formula One, which is pretty special. And unfortunately, Kick Sauber was absolutely stinky all year last year. But even with that, Zhou was one position off of scoring a point in the sprint, which would have been very special. So we don't completely lose Zhou Guan Yu this year. He is a reserve driver for Ferrari. And God knows after the first race, Ferrari needs all of the support that it can get. But
maybe Lewis or Charles will need an appendectomy, and we'll get a Zhou Guan Yu home race in the Ferrari.
Would be crazy. The crowd
happened before.
The crowd would certainly love it. But even though it was a dominant race by Max last year, both editions, sprint and Grand Prix, there was still excitement in both of those races. So definitely worth tuning in. But before we fully get ready for this race weekend, we got to make our predictions for not only the regular Grand Prix, we have a couple additional categories to predict. So Josh is going to give us a little bit of a score update after one race and kind of highlight the two extra categories we are making our best guesses at this week.
Yeah, we mentioned it in the last episode, but Matt leading the way with me right behind, J9 right behind me, and Ben in last place. But we're one race in, so we've got 23 more to go. But this week we have 2 extra points up for grabs, because we'll be predicting the sprint pole position and the sprint winner. So, I mean, it is still so early in the season. It is anyone's game. So, Matt, we'll see if you can hold on to your lead, or if Ben, you'll be able to catch up.
I'll try and claw it back. We will do our best, but it makes the most sense to go chronologically. And we should start, of course, with our week 1 leader. So starting with the sprint pole prediction, Matt, who are you going with?
Lando. I see that momentum just continuing for now. More to come on my other predictions for the race weekend, but I do see him just coming out hot in that sprint quality.
Yeah, he's been so good in qualifying over the last, most of last season, and obviously in Australia. It'll be interesting now that the FIA has announced they're cracking down on the mini DRS that McLaren has had, if their car is going to continue to be...
Watch like McLaren
them
be unaffected by this, and other teams getting kind of limited.
Yeah, it's possible. But yeah, I have Lando Norris winning the sprint pole position as well, because he's just the fastest driver in qualifying right now in the fastest car. So he's got to be there. And J9 has gone with the same.
I have kept it in the same team, but I have gone with Oscar Piastri on sprint pole. He was very unfortunate from one mistake to really lose out and really kind of continue the curse of Australians struggling out the Australian Grand Prix. But after he picked himself back up, got back off of the grass and continued the race, he made an insane overtake on Lewis, I think purely out of anger and spite. And I think Oscar is really going to want to kind of forget about last week. And I think he's got a hunger. I think he's got a fuel, because for most of the race, he realized how close he was to Lando. So I think that extra edge, that extra energy is going to get him to the front of the grid, at least for the sprint race.
That's interesting you say that, because I have that same logic as to why I think he will win the sprint race.
Wow.
Hey, I'm right there with you. I think Oscar is converting pole to victory in the sprint. I think what we saw from Australia, at least, again, sample size of 1, so you always got to take it with a grain of salt. But McLaren's tire deg is so good that even Oscar, who his biggest weakness relative to Lando has been tire management, is especially over a sprint distance, he can probably just blitz anyways, because the McLaren is that good at maintaining kind of tire quality and consistency. So I see him converting it.
You have Piastri converting his pole into a win. I have Norris converting his pole into a win.
I'd be happy with
J9
both outcomes, to be clear.
I'm sure you would, Mr. McLaren over there. And J9 has gone with Max Verstappen to win the sprint, who he had a great race in the wet. I don't personally think the Red Bull will be at the top of the field in the sprint, but Max is obviously a 4-time champion for a reason.
Yeah,
He's probably the most talented driver on the grid. So
we'll have to see if the wet conditions in Australia were beneficial to people chasing McLaren or kind of a crutch, and maybe they'll actually come out stronger. We have yet to see. So obviously there's sprint points up for grabs, 8 for the winner, all the way down to 1 for 8th place. But the real money, the real glory, that comes from the Grand Prix, of course. But before we get there, we got to talk about the main race qualifying pole position. Josh, coming right back to you. Who'd you go with?
Yeah, both me and J9 have gone with Lando. Same reasons before. He's just the quickest quality driver right now. He's got to stay there.
I have to agree. I think all 4 of us are in agreement. I think especially if my other predictions in the sprint.
You don't have him to win the sprint pole, but you have him to win the regular pole?
If my prediction is correct about the pole, then Lando is going to realize he has to step it up. He can't. It's going to be a real fight for the championship if he has to really, really battle his teammate race in, race out. So he's going to have to step it up.
Obviously, Lando has a lead on Piastri in the constructor or in the drivers' championship right now. It's obviously too early for McLaren to declare him the number 1 driver for the season. So I'm curious how long they'll let the two of them battle it out.
Well, that's like
real.
The big motivation for Lando now is if he can really dominate and win the first 4 or 5 races and really not massive lead, like nothing obviously insurmountable, but if he can really solidify himself as just a little bit ahead of Oscar, he will start to get those favorable decisions. So certainly works out for him. Will he convert it to a race win? We will get there, but we're going to start at the bottom of the podium. Still a considerable result. P3, that is. Matt, jumping to you.
Going with our boy Max V. Obviously interesting race in Australia. I guess the only reason I have him at 3 is because I had better options for 2 and 1, but I just don't see him not like getting himself onto that podium.
I have gone with Lewis Hamilton. I think obviously really bad start in Australia, but I think with him getting more familiar with the car, I think it'll be difficult since they won't have 3 practice sessions, but I think even if he doesn't do well in the sprint, it's more racing to get used to the car. And I think once he figures out the car, I think he's going to be a very good driver. And I think he'll put it in 3rd.
History supports it. I mean,
yeah, he's
most
been great
wins
here.
ever here.
Yeah. And J9 has gone with Charles Leclerc, teammate. So let's see, Ferrari potential podium after such a bad race 1.
I'm clearly not going to gain a lot of ground on our predictors championship leader, Matt, because I also went Max Verstappen. We've seen it before in that team dynamic where Max is just so far ahead of his teammates that on sprint weekends, the sprint for the Red Bull 2 driver just turns into a practice section for Max to give him a little more tire data for the actual Grand Prix. So, even if Mercedes or even if Ferrari might have a slightly better car, we know how much Max can overperform and overdrive his equipment. So I think with that added effectively practice sessions for him, he'll be able to stick it on the podium. And then just ahead of him, I do have Oscar Piastri hanging on to P2 in this one. Hopefully for everybody, the weather's a little bit better, but I just see Oscar just having a fire kind of in him this weekend to bounce back after a kind of a devastating end to his home race. So I think he's going to do well.
Yeah, same here. And I'm guessing that we have the same podium, Ben.
Mayhaps.
But I won't get ahead of ourselves. Same reasoning and everything. And I do think, though, that this is going to come down to a lot of the strategy between the two of them. And, one interesting or wrong call on the tire wear and pit strategy could see them flip. But, hey.
J9 has gone with Max Verstappen, who you both have finishing 3rd, finishing P2. And I've gone with Lando Norris.
Ooh.
I think he's going to fail to convert his pole into a win in the race, even though I have him doing that in the sprint, because I have his teammate Oscar Piastri going on. I'm on the record saying I think he's a better driver than Norris. I think when the conditions are regular, it'll be a level playing field, and I think Piastri is going to outrace his teammate and win the race.
I get where you're coming from. I do think that Oscar's like highest highs already are as high as anybody's.
Yeah.
Kind of on it. And, obviously Lando's big thing is converting poles to wins. I want to see it. I think he's going to do it. I think we saw from Australia, especially
too much rain.
But also,
rain.
No, I think even though the safety car restarts, like Max is so good at safety car restarts on getting the jump. And Lando had to do it 3 times and was able to
Lando's
hold him
a car merchant. He's got the best car by God. So far.
The disrespect
and
for
Oscar's
the dude,
in the same car.
His constructor is in P7 right now. Ferrari got 5 points last race, so I don't want to hear it. I've gone with Lando Norris winning
J9
this
also
race.
has Lando. Yeah.
Yep. And same here.
All right, so cool. I have a chance to grab 1 point off of Matt in all of the predictions so far, so that's going well for me. We've got P10, though. Before we jump into the spicy hot takes where the real points are up for grabs, we have got P10. We all flubbed this one last week, so maybe with a little more knowledge of how the teams are stacking up, how the drivers are stacking up. Josh, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I've gone former Ferrari boy Carlos Sainz. I think disappointing race, obviously, last weekend, getting the DNF in Australia. But I think hopefully his car will work for a full weekend. And he's obviously quick. He's a good driver. Albon had a great race last weekend in the same car. So, I think Sainz will score a point. His first as a Williams.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Former Ferrari man, Fernando Alonso. That was just so disappointing. I think he's going to be really pissed off that out of all the people who DNF'd last race, he was not only the most tenured, but he's the most tenured on the entire track. I don't see Aston Martin having a great car this year, but hey, I think he's got the skill to fight for it.
I've gone for not Ferrari man, but instead little Japanese boy, Yuki Tsunoda. I think he's
called a little boy.
He might be the shortest one on the grid. So I'm talking physical stature here, of course. But Yuki Tsunoda, I mean, he had such a great race and qualifying in Australia and nothing to show for it. I think the Red Bull, or excuse me, not the Red Bull, the V-Carb, the Racing Bull, totally different. I think that he has a good shot to put in back-to-back strong performances.
J9 has also gone for little boy Yuki Tsunoda. So,
well, I found our clip of the week. There you go.
Yeah.
But that brings us, of course, to I wish J9 was here for it because she does it the best, but the spicy hot takes. That's right. It's our one crazy guess worth 3 times as much as any other prediction. So how are we turning it jalapeno hot? Are we going ghost pepper hot? Matt, why don't you set the Scoville scale for us?
Yeah, I mean, let me know if this isn't hot enough, but I was saying that at least one Red Bull, Ferrari, or Mercedes DNFs due to a mechanical failure. I think that those are the teams that typically have the strongest setups. You don't often see them go out for those reasons. It's more there's a crash or something else. And obviously, hey, this could be a jalapeno take. I've got something else in the bag if it is.
No, I'm cool with it, but we are going to have to kind of give the judge, like if they hit the wall, I mean, that's technically a mechanical failure, but you're talking like a component breakdown.
Car breakdown.
Yeah, they're driving on the track and all of a sudden okay.
You're saying like
I would say like there
Max
could be like a
Bortoletto-esque
situation where the suspension fails and that's why they hit the wall.
But I think, and we also see sometimes where you have a driver who they're just like retire the car and they make it back to the pits, but they're still kind of DNFing that way. So
that's a mechanical failure.
I'm cool with that.
I think that's hot.
I am cool with that.
I think especially at the end of the regulations, like we don't see those all that often.
Good point.
So I think it'll be hot. Obviously, we saw some last year. Early in the season, you're always, I think, more prone to seeing them. I think that's hot. J9 has gone with, she's stealing yours from last week, Matt, except not all rookies. Kimi Antonelli getting a top 5. He obviously did it in Australia, but to go back-to-back.
He's the real deal. If he does, I'm fully locking in. Like, he's the real deal. If he starts his F1 career off with back-to-back top 5 finishes, then, I mean, you're starting your career as good as anybody.
Yeah.
That's hot.
And then I have gone that there will be a collision between teammates. Ooh. So I don't know which team it's going to be, but and maybe it's possible it's the McLarens because they'll be fighting at the front, so much on the line.
It could be
Little
Max
bumpy
hitting
bump.
Liam as he's lapping him. You don't know.
We
don't really have
possible.
We don't really have the Alpine dynamic of Gasly and Ocon, who just like to drive into each other for fun this year. So that is definitely a hotter take than it was last year. I have gone with, because there's the sprint in play, at the end of this weekend, Williams will have already surpassed their total points from last year. So right now they're sitting on 10. They had 17 all of last year. So I'm saying Williams is going to get 8 or more points this weekend. So they will be at 18 or more points, surpassing last year's total already in the first 2 races this season. We'll see if it was wet weather fluke and luck, or if Williams is actually fronting the midfield battle this year.
I have Carlos earning a point. So 7 more between the sprint and the rest of the race.
The sprint definitely helps me, but I think it's still an uphill battle depending on the weather conditions and if the Big Four return to form. But if you thought the Australian Grand Prix times in the Eastern United States were a doozy, get ready for the Chinese Grand Prix. As we mentioned, sprint race weekend, there's a lot more meaningful sessions. So starting in the second section of the weekend, we have got the sprint shootout at 3:30 in the morning on Friday. So I don't know if that counts as staying up or waking up early.
Obviously.
Later that day, for us at least, we have the actual sprint race at 11 p.m. on Friday. That might be the only session I catch in real time. We've got qualifying at 3 a.m. on Saturday. And the same time, 3 a.m. on Sunday, you have the Formula One Heineken Chinese Grand Prix. I believe it is on ESPN, as it always. I mean, what's competing with it on ESPN at 3 in the morning? I don't think anything.
Usually like cornhole or Excel championships.
Hey, that's usually on the Ocho Day on August 8th. But yeah, either watch it live or set your DVR or just pull up the highlights in the morning. It is going to be early. I will definitely be watching it the next morning for sure. But as we did for the Australian Grand Prix, we will be breaking down everything that happened across the whole weekend, that sprint shootout, sprint, qualifying, and the Grand Prix itself after this weekend. So to be sure to tune in to that, we will talk to you then. But until then, of course, stay speedy. Goodbye, everyone.